The following is a summary of the Sicha of Shabbos Parshas Behar Bechukosai Shabbos Mevorchim Chodesh Sivan Tov Shin Nun. We are now in the days of preparation for Matan Torah. This Shabbos is Shabbos Mevorchim Sivan, in which we give a bracha to the month of Sivan, which gives koyach to us all in order to receive the Torah anew. And therefore, it is the correct time now to think about Matan Torah in a way which every single person will be able to understand and prepare for the events of Matan Torah anew. One of the ideas which is brought out by Matan Torah is the idea of the number 3. The Gemara in Shabbos, Daf Peches Amud Aleph says, Brich Rachmana, blessed be Hashem, the Yohav Oirion Teluisoi, that gave a Torah of 3 parts, Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim, La'am Telisoi, to a nation which is divided into 3, Kohanim, Leviim, and Yisrael, Al Yidei Telisoi, through a third one, which was Moshe Rabbeinu, B'yom Telisoi, after the 3 days of preparation, B'archa Telisoi, in the 3rd month, Nisan Iyar, in the month of Sivan. And as the Torah itself says, B'chodesh HaShlishi, in the 3rd month, they arrived at Har Sinai. So we see clearly that there's a connection with the number 3. Most years, Shabbos Mevorchim Sivan falls on Parshas Behar Bechukosai, where we actually finish reading the 3rd Sefer of Vayikra in the Torah, and we announce Chazak, Chazak, V'nis Chazek, at the end of finishing Sefer Vayikra, which again is the 3rd Sefer, and saying Chazak 3 times. So therefore we see a very strong connection with Matan Torah and the number 3. The idea is as follows. The whole idea of Matan Torah, of giving the Torah down here below, is that somebody here in this world should serve Hashem as they are in this world, nevertheless permeated with alikus, with godliness, and through this they can elevate the world. That's why the Torah was given with garments down here below. Originally it was supernal wisdom, and that cascaded down, as the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, like a waterfall into this world, becoming clothed within the physical matters of this world, in order that a person should be able to integrate that and be able to elevate the world. And since the human being and the world is divided into 3, therefore it's connected with Torah, which is the number 3. What does that mean? The conduct of a person is in 3 areas: in machshava, thought, dibur, speech, and maisa, action. A healthy human being brings machshava and dibur, thought and speech, into action. And in this world, hamaisa hua ikar, the action is the main thing. And in order that the action should be the main thing, it needs to come as a shlishi, as a 3rd point, after the machshava and dibur, after thought and speech. In other words, the maisa, the deed, should not be gechapt ungiton, just done quickly without any prior consideration. However, a person needs first of all to think about what they're going to do, to speak it through with others, to see if this is the right thing to do, and then to do it. So there needs to be some sort of hefsek, some sort of interruption between the thought and the speech and the deed. That actually is arrayed in the shape of the letter Hey, which the 3 lines of the Hey, the top, right, and down, is the machshava and dibur, and then the left foot is cut off from the roof. That's the idea of maisa, and it's cut off because there needs to be a hefsek, a divide between the 2. And we also have that in the world, that you have barosiv, yotzarativ, af, asisiv. You have the world of bria, yitzira, and then there's a hefsek, the af, until the world of asiya. So before a person does something, there needs to be a thought process, if that is what they should actually do. And obviously sometimes they have doubts and therefore they speak it through with others, and then they can actually do it. This brings a shleimus, a completion both in the deed, and also it brings a completion in the thought process and the speech process as well. And that's how a person becomes an Odom Sholem. Odom, in fact, stands for machshava, coming from the word Aleph Alefcha Chochma, the idea of wisdom, machshava, thought. Dalet is Dibur, and Mem is Maisa. And just like a human being's conduct is divided into those three, thought, speech, and action, so too is it in the world at large, which Bishvili Nivra Ha'olam, for me was the world created. In other words, the whole of Seder Ishtalshelus, the chain order of creation, of the three worlds of Bria, Yetzira, and Asiya, corresponds and parallels Machshava, Dibur, and Maisa. And in each world itself, you have 10 spheres. Those are also split into three: Chabad, Chagas, Nehi. You have a Rosh, a head, a Toich, a middle, and a Soif, rather like a human being who has a head, a torso, and feet, has a brain, a heart, and a liver, has bones, sinews, and flesh. And that is how it is in the entire creation, which is made of principally three elements: Eish, fire, Mayim, water, Ruach, and air, Rosh Tevas Amar, as it says in the Sefer Yetzirah. And according to this, we will understand also the opinion of the grammarians of the Sfardim, who say that in Lashon HaKodesh in Hebrew, the shoresh, the root of a word, is always a three-lettered root. The 22 letters of the Aleph base are in fact 22 avenues and conduits of bringing down chayas, energy, to the world, and therefore that's why each word, its root, is with three letters. And just like by a human being, it's not enough to have machshava and dibur, but there also needs to be maisa. So too in the worlds. It's not enough to have the worlds of Bria and Yetzira. One must also have the world of Asiya. And on the contrary, the whole purpose of the chain order of creation is not for the purpose of the higher worlds. However, the purpose is dira b'tachtonim, to create a dwelling in the lowest of all worlds. Nevertheless, together with that purpose, that lowest of all worlds needs to know that it's a third world, meaning it's the lowest of all worlds, and within that world one needs to inject the elokus which is to be found in the higher worlds. This is the whole purpose of the creation of man. Asher bara Elokim lasois. Lasois is the idea of lasakein, of correcting and elevating the world which was created for man to do. The neshama above is connected with machshava, the understanding of Torah, or with dibur in the world of Yetzirah. However, since the kavana is dira b'tachtonim, the neshama, which is pristine, it's tahirahi, comes to this world in a body, physical body, in order to do its shlichus in the physical, fulfilling mitzvahs in thought, speech, and action, and through the three pillars which the world stands on, Torah, Avodah, and Gemilas Chasadim. And within each mitzvah itself, you have three elements. You have the kavana of the mitzvah, the intention of the mitzvah, which is corresponding to machshava, the bracha over the mitzvah, which is corresponding to dibur, and the maisa ha-mitzvah, the deed of the mitzvah, which is corresponding to maisa. So it's not enough just to have machshava and dibur, because if a person, for example, read Kriyas Shema in their mind and didn't enunciate the words and articulate them verbally, they have not fulfilled their obligation. On the other hand, it says that a mitzvah without kavana is like a body without a neshama. And therefore, the avodah of a yid has to be arrayed in three in order to elevate a world which is also arrayed in the number three. And the giving of the Torah down here is in order that all a person's physical deeds should be synced with the Ratzon of Hashem to refine and elevate their own being and the being of the world. It says by Matan Torah that Vayered Hashem al Har Sinai. The main thing is Dira B'Tachtonim. Hashem came down to this world. But together with that, there was also a tremendous Gilui at Har Sinai. As it says in the Mechilta, Melamed Shamayim Ho'elyena B'Tachtonim, that Hirkin Hashem took the heavens, the upper heavens, the lower heavens, and he brought them down and he laid them like laying a bed on Har Sinai, and the Kisei HaKavod descended on that. So we see that there was a revelation of Masa HaMerkava, of the Merkava at Har Sinai. And also you had the idea of Dibur by Idaber Elikim, and you had the Aseres Adibras. So you had, at the same time as the descent on Har Sinai, the Dira B'Tachtonim in Maisa, you also had a tremendous Gilui of Machshava and Dibur. And that gives us the capability that we should also serve Hashem with all of those three. So to summarize, the Torah was given in three parts, in a world which is arrayed in three, in Machshava, Dibur, U'Maisa, on a third month, by a third one, and it was given on the third day of preparation. And now we also understand the connection with the third Sefer, with the Sefer Vayikra, which we finish reading this Shabbos, because the idea of finishing the number 3, the Sefer Vayikra is full of halachas of a Torah. In fact, it's often referred to as an Ari, as the lion, because it's the most, so to speak, it's the Sefer which has many of mitzvahs, the Sefer which is called Sefer of Korbanos, Torah's Kohanim, and the whole idea of Korbanos encapsulates this avodah of Hashem, Adam ki yakriv mikem, taking from you and elevating it to Hashem. And in fact, that's why in the Korbanos there are 3 points to it. There's the machshava of the korban, there's the dibur, which is the singing of the shir at the time of the korban, and there's also the actual bringing of the korban. So you have the machshava, the tefillah, the dibur, the Talmud Torah of korbanos, and the actual aveda of the korbanos. And that's why we finish this reading with chazak, chazak v'nis chazek, saying it 3 times to emphasize the concept of number 3. This is all the more so brought out on Parshas Behar and Bechukosai, which each one of those sedras, both Behar and Bechukosai, is connected with mitzvahs which were given at Matan Torah. In the beginning of Behar, it says clearly, Behar Sinai. And just like Shemitah was given a Har Sinai with all this mitzvahs and klolos and dikdukin, so to all the mitzvahs. And Bechukosai, again you have klolos HaTorah mitzvahs, and in the 3 ways of Machshava, Dibur, U'Maisa, which are actually hinted to in the idea of Amelim B'Torah, and Tishmeru is Dibur, and Vasisem is Maisa. And at the end of Parshas Bechukosai, you have quite clearly, it says, Eila ha-mitzvahs asher tziva Hashem es Moshe el b'nei Yisrael b'Har Sinai. So you see that everything in this Sedra is connected with Har Sinai. In fact, just before the end of Bechukosai, we also have the concept of Ho'asiri Yeh Kodesh, the separation of Maisa and that becoming holy, which, in fact, the whole of Seder Hishtalshelus is split into 10 in more detail than 3. You have 10 spheres in each world, Eser Koiches within each person, and in everything you have the length, breadth, and depth, which includes the head, middle, and the end, together with the place itself, is 10. As the Rambam says, the etzem and the tes mikrim. And through the giving of Maisa, one elevates the entire world. This concept is also emphasized at the beginning of Parshas Har in the mitzvah of Shemitah. It's well known the question that the Torah says at the beginning of Parshas Behar that as soon as kisavoyo ela oretz, as soon as you come into the land, v'shavas ha'oretz Shabbos l'Hashem, the land shall rest a Shabbos. That really doesn't make sense, because as soon as you come into land, first of all there should be the Sheishanim Tisra Sadecha, the 6 years that you work on the land, and then thereafter you have the Shemitah. Why does it say immediately that there should be a Shemitah? The answer is that the kavanah, the whole intent of Sheish Shonim Tisra Sadecha, of working 6 years, involving oneself with Gashmias of the world, is V'shav Sa'aretz, is to bring in Elokus into the world, through the mitzvahs which are dependent on the land. And that's why the Torah begins with the kavanah, and then it goes on to the actual deed. And this teaches us that Kisavayu Ela Aretz, the when a neshama comes down to the world, in order to do its avodah of Sheish Shonim, to work with the world in the 6,000 years in which the world will exist, it needs to be permeated with the machshava and the kavana of V'shav Sa'aretz Shabbos L'Hashem, that the whole purpose is adira b'tachtonim. In other words, the masa is miyusad on the kavana. The deed is founded and permeated with the whole purpose. In fact, that's what we do every single day when we wake up. We say the thoughts in our heart. We have the thought in our hearts. We think before whom we are sleeping or just woken up, and then we say b'dibur moida ani, and then we get to the avodah b'poil. So the koyach which a yid does this avodah with machshava dibur u'maisa will be b'shleimus, because in fact that's actually how it is by Hashem. What do we mean by that? Have a look in Pirkei Avos of this week, Perek Hey. It says, "Basara ma'amores nivra ha'olam, v'haloi b'mayim echad yochel yibaris elalim b'para min harishayim." It says that the world was created with 10 utterances. It could have been created with 1, but the reason why it was created with 10 was to punish the Rishayim. Now the Mefarshim, all the commentaries on the Mishnah, ask the question: if it's possible for Hashem to create the world with 1 maimer and not 10, so why did the Rishayim get punished? So for example, if Reuven bought a vessel worth $1, but he bought it for 10, and Shimon then stole it, should Shimon pay 10? It's only worth 1. The answer is, when it says v'haloi b'mayim echad, that mayim echad is a reference to the level of machshava, of Hashem's machshava. If Hashem would have created the world on the level of machshava, the whole world would have been completely nullified in Elokus, and there wouldn't have been the diversity in creation. Since the kavanah, the whole purpose of creation, is diversity, is that the world should feel itself as a separate entity, and within that there's the free choice of human beings, and through their avodah they should come to a bittul to Elokus. That cannot happen through a maimer echad. It's only through basara mamoris that you have the diversity within creation. If it would have been created through a maimer echad, the world would have been a completely different world, and it was only through the asara mamoris that there is free choice, and therefore you can punish the Rishoyim. However, that presents the question the other way around. If it's impossible to create the world with 1 maimer, so why does the Mishnah say v'halei b'maimer echad yochel hibaris, that the world could have been created with 1 maimer? The answer is that taka, the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu did create the world, was with 1 maimer. However, it came out b'poyo in 10 mamoris. In other words, it started off with 1 maimer, started off with the machshava of 1 maimer, but ended up in dibur and maisa with 10 mamoris. So what we actually see over here is that by HaKadosh Baruch Hu you also have these 3 elements. There's the maimer echad element of machshava, which is the kavana in the world, and then you have the asara mamoris, the creation b'poil. And so, since by HaKadosh Baruch Hu it's also arrayed in 3, therefore by the human being and in Torah it's also arrayed in 3. So now we have avodas Hashem, in fact, bidirectional. The neshama as it is above is connected with machshava, with the maimer echad. However, as it comes down here, it comes with the feeling of that maimer echad. It understands that its purpose is not the sheish shonim tizra, it's not the engagement with the gashmias and being sunken in the gashmias, But the purpose of engaging with the Gashmias is V'shav Sa'aret Shabbos L'Hashem, is to elevate the Gashmias to Ruchnias, is to permeate the physical world and the material world with godliness. And similarly, it is in a person's avodah. It's not good enough the avodah only with machshava and dibur, but there needs to be also ma'aser. True, with a hefsek, as the Frierdiker Rebbe said, that before one does something, one should always look into Shulchan Aruch to see if it is appropriate. Nevertheless, the deed has to be permeated with the previous thoughtful process and the speaking through with others. The Hairah B'Pol which we can learn is that we should take on good decisions in learning Torah, both Nigla and Pnimius HaTorah, Kiyum HaMitzvahs Behidur, all in an array of 3 in Machshava, Dibur, and Ma'aser. And especially to make a shturim about children coming to shul on Yom Tov of Shavuos to hear the Aseres HaDibros, the Yehi Rotzen, that after our Ma'aseinu Ba'avedasenu, there will be the Geula Mitzvah Shlema in the Beis HaMikdash Hashlishi, in the 3rd Beis HaMikdash, where we'll be able to receive the Torah anew, b'simcha u'bipnimius.